So I watched the first Spider-Verse twice in theaters, and this time around I watched it 3 times. So I'm gonna give the opinion that nobody asked for. Oh, and by the way, spoilers.
Crazy. There's so many people in this room and nobody asked. That's the.
So Spider-Man is my favorite superhero of all time, and Into the Spider-Verse is one of, if not my personal favorite superhero movie as well. So coming into the sequel, I had a lot of high expectations. I was actually a couple days late coming into this movie, and so I had to stay off the internet for a couple of days, otherwise I'd get spoiled. But I did get spoiled on 2 things, which were kind of like not really spoilers, but were joke spoilers of like basically the first plot point was that the whole movie was basically just about that all the other Spider-Man being jealous that Miles has 2 parents who are alive and very loving. And the second thing was that there were a lot of people going, I need me a Gwen Stacy in my life for real. And so when the first scene of the movie was Gwen going, yeah, but I hurt Miles too, I was like, fellas, come on, fellas, what's going on here, fellas? Actually, Gwen's world is probably my favorite. That first scene where we're showing her world with the like dynamic changing backgrounds, and even during the dialogue scenes, there was just a whole lot of action going, a whole lot to look at. It was just so pretty, and how it changed and fluctuated with the characters' emotions, like that whole mood ring concept, it was just so beautiful to look at. And going from Gwen getting really emotional with the punk drums, which was like so nice, and then like transitioning to Self-Love off the Metro album, and Gwen going back and forth, walking on the Metro and stuff, going between Gwen and then her Spider-Gwen outfit. It was just too good, bro. It was just, the movie just started. And then after her backstory, it jumps from that punk drum to Gwen's, like, to the Self-Love theme, and then jumps into the electric guitar for Gwen's theme when she suits up and goes to go fight the Vulture. And it was just, those 3 songs were just so good and just transitioned so well. Like, the movie just started. Let's just get out of the way. Daniel Pemberton cooked on this movie. If you didn't know Daniel Pemberton rocked now, like until now, like you sure as hell, like he just popped out. Like the first Spider-Verse was already really good soundtrack wise, and this one, there's a certain song, I think you kind of already know what I'm talking about, but there's a certain song I want to touch upon later in the video that Daniel Pemberton just really, like the music made, like the visuals, of course, across the board, beautiful. Way better than the first movie, but the music is what really made it. It made all those emotions just so palpable. That's the music doing that. That's Daniel Pemberton. I'm really glad that Spider-Man 2099 was an integral part to this movie. Actually, when the first movie came out in 2018, I was a little surprised and disappointed that there was a multiverse Spider-Man movie and Spider-Man 2099 wasn't going to be a part of that. Of course, we got to see him in the post-credit scene, which I was like, you know, that was a pleasant surprise. And I'm really glad they made him an integral part to this movie, and how as an antagonist, you can actually kind of relate to his character, and how like he just plays the straight man. He's just like the fed up babysitter to like all the other like Peter Parker's like jokes and quips and stuff. Really well done, Oscar Isaac, brilliant job. The reason why I like 2099 so much without really knowing too much of like his story in the comics and stuff is that, well, I like cyberpunk. But I'm a big fan of Batman Beyond, and Spider-Man 2099 struck me as like the Batman Beyond for Spider-Man. So I was really into him, and of course his character design is just so nice, dude. His character design is just fire. I'm glad that I was able to care about both antagonists in the movie. Spider-Man 2099, Miguel O'Hara, of course, goes without saying. His character is very relatable, and we'll touch upon the story and the themes and such later in the video. But for right now, we'll focus on the Spot. The Spot was actually, I really liked his introduction. It was very funny, made the character very likable, and the design was just so cool. Like when he hit the collider and Mumbattan, and his art style changed, it was just so, we're just gonna like get that out of the way. The visuals, just stellar across the board. I could address it every single time we got to a different part talking about this movie. So we're just gonna go ahead and say that the visuals were good. I like the visuals, they're very pretty, very nice. But I'm getting ahead of myself. We need to talk about Miles. And I really like seeing Miles really step up to the Spider-Man mantle in this movie. Of course, we see him have that like classic work-life balance issue that Spider-Man always has to have, and how like him and his parents are like very likable. And I've heard some people say like the first act kind of drags, but I actually really enjoyed the first act, and how Spider-Man, like I feel like slice of life is just such a huge part of Spider-Man's character. It was nice to see that with Miles. And I feel like we also forget that like Miles is also super smart, and how in the first movie, even though he was, you know, he got into Brooklyn Visions Academy and such, his interest still seemed to lean into art. But you notice that in this movie, clearly they've leaned more into like the science and like physics and such. And it's just all because he wants to see his, like, build a machine to see his friends. And it's just, that makes the Spider Society just so much more heartbreaking later in the film. The story is very relatable in the sense that, you know, growing up in high school, I wanted friends with similar interests. And while I did have like a friend group at the time, none of them really wanted to go as deep into like the film stuff and like the artistic stuff as I did, apart from like one or two. And, you know, I failed in that department. There were a couple of semi-popular kids, or if not popular, who just happened to be good at film. And so I really wanted to work on projects with them and kind of like learn and see them work and like improve at the craft. It kind of bullied me for wanting to join their group. But I kind of learned that you have to like, you can't wait for someone to invite you to the table. You have to build your own table. Or as this movie likes to put it, you have to start your own band. You can't wait to join somebody else's. And I thought that was very cool and a very relatable piece of the film. So the main conflict of the movie being a meta commentary on the Spider-Man story, and for whatever reasons, people didn't accept Miles being Spider-Man at the beginning, I thought was really cool, and just kind of like pitting the whole idea of like, you know, self-sacrifice certainly is a part of Spider-Man's story, but so is with great power comes great responsibility. And having the knowledge that something's going to happen to somebody and standing by and doing nothing, pitting that versus self-sacrifice is very interesting to see. Predictions for Beyond the Spider-Verse, Miles at the beginning of the movie, and they do quite a good job with foreshadowing in the Spider-Verse movies, where Miles, you know, they talk about like how you can't have your cake and eat it too, and then Miles comes in the room and goes like, well, unless you bake 2 cakes. And then when he goes to the party, he brings 2 cakes. And we can see in Mumbadan with Patir, he was talking about like, I can do both. And when Miles saves the police captain, that is Miles being the second cake. So I don't think Miles is actually going to save his dad in the next movie, but I think one of his friends will, and that's the second cake. And of course, the movie gives room to that belief with Gwen's dad no longer becoming police captain anymore. Regarding the question of, do spider people need trauma to be Spider-Man? I don't think they do. One of my favorite Spider people is actually Mayday Parker. You saw her in the movie, but she was a baby. She's actually one of my favorite Spider women because her Spider sense is really cool because she can tell when people are lying and helps her read emotions, and her like Spider sense is just like better than Peter's allegedly, and she learned martial arts from Elektra. Her story is also about upholding like, you know, her father's legacy, or upholding the legacy of Spider-Man, and she grew up not with a lot of trauma. And I think she makes a fine Spider-Woman. So I don't really think trauma is the big part of it. I think the bigger part is that whole with great power comes great responsibility, and having the empathy to not just save and want to help the best of people, but also the worst of people. The sacrifice and stuff is just a byproduct of that. It just so happens that most of the time that means you can't do both, but that doesn't mean that sometimes you can, if that makes sense. That's kind of like my take on that. So now we're gonna talk about the different Spider people. It was really great seeing Peter P. Parker, of course, gonna come back, and how he was really the only one who like talked to Miles and tried to listen to understand his position, and I thought that was really cool. The Nueva York scene was great, like the whole chase on the train, everything was like fantastic. And the movie has a lot of action, to be sure, but I think a lot of its strong parts actually came from like the more quieter scenes, whether that be, you know, the aforementioned like Peter talking to Miles and Gwen under the clock tower, or just like Miles talking with his mom and dad at the beginning of the movie, Gwen talking with her dad. But for sure, the movie did not shy away from its narrative, which I thought was pretty strong. Talking more about the different Spider people, Hobie was sick. I actually, first 3 seconds, I was like, this guy's all right. But then of course, like just like Miles, the dude really grew on me, and of course he turns out to be one of the coolest dudes in the movie. It was like a real support to Miles and Gwen. Patir was also sick. I learned that that naan also means bread. I knew that chai meant tea, but I did not know that naan meant bread. I'm not that uncultured. I know a little bit. Also, can we take a moment to talk about Penny Parker? When I first saw her like in the movie, I was like, that new suit kind of looks like an Ava, and then she comes out of the suit and I'm like, oh no, she got Shinjified. Okay, but talking about that last act, or can be called the last act because the movie kind of ends on from a cliffhanger, just like that last section after Miles and Gwen both like go home. I actually knew something was up. Maybe I just guessed and got the right answer or whatever, but like I was just so paying attention to the different art styles, and I noticed that the rain was different. Also, just to very quickly mention the whole Miles swinging through the city with like the, you know, Miguel's like tormenting, like it's Miguel's words tormenting him, along with like the clips of his different friends on the buildings and stuff, and like in his like eye patches or whatever, you get to see like that was all very, very cool. And in 2099, when he like goes into Earth 42 to chase Miles, he like kind of like doesn't just open a portal, he like rips it open with a claw. That was sick. Okay, so this is what 3 watchthroughs will do to you, but that last scene, first off, when Miles puts on the jacket, you can see that the hoodie is like purple, like the coloration, the color scheme is like purple and black, which are Prowler colors. And if you notice from the beginning of the movie, when he wears the hoodie, it's red and blue like Spider-Man. And so that was a cool little detail thing that maybe you could have picked up before they revealed that the Miles in this universe is Prowler, because he wears Prowler colored clothes. And also, because his dad's dead, Miles's voice has that more like Spanish accent to it, because like, you know, his dad was dead, so he had to be around his mom a lot more. Miles's father talks about a lot in the beginning of the film, like, you know, am I doing the father thing right? Am I being a good dad or whatever? And you can see that clearly, like, Miles does, like, they need him around. Otherwise, you know, Miles turns to crime, especially in a world without Spider-Man. Miles turns to crime, becomes the Prowler. Now we can talk about the song that I wanted to talk about in the beginning, which is the Across the Spider-Verse, like, start a band song on the soundtrack. It like starts with the Prowler theme. It starts to build up with like Miles's like triumphant theme from like the first movie. And as those two kind of go together, then Gwen's like punk drums start to kind of support Miles a bit. And then, you know, when the portal opens for them to go to Hobie's world, the guitar comes in, and like it all just crescendos into like this beautiful, like just exhilarating, like it was just so well done. It was just so well done. Also, I'm calling it first thing that's happening in that next movie. They also kind of foreshadowed this a little bit, where Miles doesn't have Spider-Man as a teacher, and the first lesson that Miles learned from Peter B. Parker is don't watch the mouth, watch the hands. And then Peter gets out, and I feel like Miles is gonna do the same exact thing to the Prowler Miles. And I heard that TV in the back with the Sinister Six cartel, so probably gonna get Spider people fighting the Sinister Six, which is gonna be dope. And I just can't wait. I can't wait. I know a lot of people were mad. About that ending. And like, I wanted more to be sure, but like, I don't care, bro. I don't care. It was a good movie. It was a good movie. Some people are like, oh, you know, you can't really call it or give it a rating or whatever, because like the movie's just kind of like, oh, you know, it leaves off on like a cliffhanger, and you'll get like a lot of like the satisfaction of things. I liked it a lot. I liked it a lot. Anyways, I love Spider-Man. Anyone can wear the mask, but not everyone can make web shooters. I need me Spider-Woman for real. Penny Parker's got that Simone drip from Gurren Lagann, that Power of Friendship drip. She got the jacket going. You already know. Anyways, that's all I got.